Everything that can be built with JavaScript will be built with JavaScript. And recently, the same has been true of Python. PyScript brought Python to the browser, and thanks to the folks over at BeeWare, we can finally use Python to write apps for our phones. BeeWare is a suite of tools for building cross-platform apps with Python. This video will serve as an introduction to Briefcase and Toga, the BeeWare libraries you need to start creating desktop, web, and mobile apps with Python. Grab your phones and prepare to do something that feels really, really wrong. To get started, you'll need to make sure you have BeeWare's dependencies installed on your system. For Windows and Mac, that's just Git and an up-to-date version of Python 3.8 or higher. For Linux or WSL, you'll need to install a few extra libraries, commands for which can be found in the BeeWare docs. Once you've set up your virtual environment, install the Briefcase package. I recommend using pip for this as it doesn't enforce any sort of project structure, which we'll need later. Briefcase is a CLI tool for packaging your application for end users, but also for bootstrapping and building BeeWare projects. We're going to be building everyone's favorite entry-level project today, a to-do app. Create the project using Briefcase New and go through the creation wizard. You can use the default values for all of these for now. This will create a new to-do app directory with a project scaffold. It looks a little intimidating at first, but it's just a Python module with some tests and app icons. CD into your new folder and run Briefcase dev to run your first cross-platform app with Python. At the moment, this will open a desktop app, but we'll get to creating projects for other platforms later. Close the window to stop the program. The first time you run this, and many of the Briefcase commands, you'll see that a few things are being downloaded. Sometimes it'll look like it's hanging, but don't worry, it's generally just a larger dependency. If we take a look in the generated app.py file, you'll see a simple BeeWare app using Toga. Toga is BeeWare's cross-platform widget toolkit. It will use the platform's native elements, and you can style them using Pack, Toga's styling system. Toga works using a system of containers and widgets. Containers, well, contain other elements. The toga.box class is a container. Widgets provide functionality and visuals for your app. Widget functionality like button clicks is handled using callback functions. The Hello World app currently just has a main window instance, which is the main window of the app. When this is closed, the application exits. Let's add some content. We'll start with our main box, which we'll style to be a column. We'll also create another box, which will be a row, and we'll have some padding all the way around. Inside this box, we'll add a label and a text input. This input has the flex style, meaning it will grow to fill available space. You'll notice we're assigning the input to a property on self. This makes it easier to refer back to later in callbacks. We'll add the label and the input to our to-do box using the .add method. This will serve as the input for our to-dos. Lastly, let's create a button to add our new to-do. Now we can add our to-do box and button to our main box. If we run the app, we have an input we can use and a button, but it currently doesn't do anything. Let's actually add our to-dos, should we? Let's create a new column with some padding, assign it to self.todos, and add it to our main box. This will be the container for our to-dos, which will each have their own boxes. Let's create a method to add to-do items. Toga callbacks take the widget as the first argument, followed by some optional keyword args. However, we don't need these for this function, so we'll just ignore them. We'll create a new variable, to-do, which will contain the current value of our input. If this is empty, we'll return early. We'll then create a flex label and a complete button, add them to a row box, and then add that row box to our to-dos. Finally, the input is cleared. Now, we need to connect this to the add to-do button we created earlier. We do that by using the onPress keyword argument. If we run the app, we can now add to-dos. Great, but the delete button doesn't do anything. Let's fix that. Like before, we'll create a method on our app. This one needs access to our widget, which is of type toga.button. Toga containers have a handy .remove method, which accepts a widget as the first element. Since our widget parameter will be our button, we'll use widget.parent to remove the to-do box from our to-do list. Add that to the onPress of our complete button, and we're done. We can now add and delete to-dos at will. This doesn't currently store to-dos anywhere, but I'll leave that as an exercise for the viewer. The BeeWare docs are linked down below. And do you know what else is down below? The subscribe button, and you should click it right now. BeeWare also allows you to use third-party libraries in your app. However, you can only use libraries that are written in pure Python. Any libraries with compiled code like NumPy or Pydantic v2 won't work. All you have to do is install the library in your virtual environment and add it to your pyproject.toml under the requires key in your app metadata. You can also add OS-specific requires if you like. If you want to build your app for release, use the briefcase create command followed by briefcase build. You can then use briefcase run to run the built version if you need to test how the native app runs. Finally, use briefcase package to create an installer for the app for your operating system. You can now share your app with all the friends you don't have. Compiling BeeWare apps for mobile is fairly straightforward. I'll be showing the steps for Android, but the steps for iOS aren't too dissimilar. You generally just replace Android with iOS in the commands. iOS compilation must also be done on a Mac. You can find more information in the BeeWare tutorial, which is linked in the description. The first step is to create the app structure. Run briefcase create Android to scaffold out a minimal Android app structure. You don't need to worry too much about the files created here unless you're a more advanced Android dev. Next, we'll build for Android using briefcase build Android. This might take a while if you don't already have the Java Development Kit, or JDK, already installed on your system. When you run briefcase run Android, you'll be prompted to create a new Android emulator, or use an existing one. Once the emulator starts, you'll see what your app looks like on a mobile. If you want to run on a physical device, simply connect a USB debugging enabled Android device to your computer via USB and run Briefcase Run Android. When you're prompted for an emulator, you'll also have the option of picking your actual device. Congrats! You've just written your first Python mobile app. BeeWare is still very early, with many of the packages not even at 1.0 yet. You probably won't be writing production-grade apps with it yet, but who knows? You might find a use for it in your smart home. There might be a future for Python app developers yet. At the beginning of the video, I recommended using pip for BeeWare development. However, I wouldn't use pip in a production setting, and if you want to know why, you should click this video here.